have had a really strong attachment to video games since I was young, and I have loved art for just as long. So for a while, I wanted to join those two and make art for video games. In my research of the field, I soon found out about a concept called crunch, this being the severe overwork of developers, oftentimes without proper compensation. For the most part, this discouraged me from the games industry, but with a newly rekindled passion for games, in this video we will examine what has now evolved into crunch culture to figure out what it really means for developers and consumers, why it's wrong, and how we could possibly fix it. Crunch itself is the unpaid excessive overtime, but crunch culture adds other maladies into the mix that have been so ingrained into the games industry's environment that is expected by developers at this point. Other aspects of crunch culture include substantial layoffs after projects are completed, and emotional and financial manipulation. In another industry, this mistreatment of employees would be unfair, but hopefully atypical. In the gaming industry, they're not only a regular occurrence, but exist within a culture that expects employees to work often unreasonable hours with no overtime compensation. This exploitation of passion can lead to severe decline in the health of developers, stress casualties, and overall lack of quality in the games produced through this culture. Crunch seems like it's rather counterintuitive, making developers spend the majority of their time, sometimes to the point where developers have to sleep in the studio working on these games. So why does this happen? The short answer is awful management. One games journalist, James Stephanie Sterling, who has been speaking on this issue for nearly a decade, has created a tagline of sorts for when they make a video talking about it. Crunch is not a triumph of the workforce, but a failure of the management. When this practice happens and a game is produced from it, higher-ups in the company who do not have experience in the actual development of games will assume that it is how the standard is, then plan upcoming projects with crunch in mind. In an interview, a former journalist for the game website Kotaku, Jason Schreier, had with Tanya X. Short, a developer who has worked in both the AAA and indie gaming spaces. Founding her own indie studio, Short says as much. It can be a self-sustaining cycle. Say a designer is able to create a sizable level after working 16 hours a day for 3 straight weeks. From then on, project managers will equate a level of that size with 3 weeks of work, and for future schedules, they'll plan accordingly, allotting 3 weeks of time to tasks that should require 6. These designers will again have to crunch to finish those future levels, and the cycle will go on and on. End quote. But game development doesn't have to be like this. Let's look at Nintendo for a show of not crunching your employees to the brink of insanity. If I'm on your For You page, that probably means that you knew that Animal Crossing New Horizons was delayed before its March release in 2020. Doug Bowser, Nintendo of America's president, had this to say on the matter, quote, "For us, one of our key tenets is that we bring smiles to people's faces, and we talk about that all the time. For us, that applies to our own employees. We need to make sure that our employees have good work-life balance. One of those examples is, we will not bring a game to market before it is ready. It is really important that we have that balance in our world. It's actually something we're proud of." End quote. With crunch being the harmful practice that it is, I think more game studios should take a page out of other studios like Nintendo and Supergiant, another game studio that purposely made sure that they did not crunch their employees on one of their newest games, Hades. What other game studios should really learn from these two studios in specific is to value the health of their workers who put so much of their lives into these games over a deadline. This can be made a reality by letting studios know that we don't like their uses of this practice and by helping developers unionize. Hope you all had a great day.